Right, so here we are, Toma Levine in New York. I'm Natalie Kent in Central Australia, and we're talking about the times we're in and our response to these times. And we're going to start with how each of us has responded and what we're observing about the people around us and how they are responding. And there's a whole myriad ways people are responding, not just going into fear of getting a virus. So there's lots of different ways people are, deciding to, or making decisions about what they do or don't do, and their perspective or view of this event. So let's start with us, Toma. How's your
Okay. Well, let me give you my little capsule perspective, because I can't remember exactly when it was that it hit me that this became personal to me. In other words, personal to my life here in New York City, because we had all been hearing about it, I suppose, when it was big news in China, but it didn't come to us yet. But there was a certain point, it seems like it's just been a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know. And it's been a sequence. It's like a cascade, a domino effect. It starts in a certain place. It starts with shock. It does have a certain quality of shock and awe because of the way, for one thing, that is amplified by the media, and that the certain hysteria and panic gets whipped up by the projections of the worst case scenarios. However, it really did become a state of shock for me when I realized that everything in my city was being shut down. The idea that there were, like, the Metropolitan Museum of Art is closed, all the museums are closed, all performance venues are closed. Broadway, I mean, what New York attracts most of its income from tourists, Broadway shows, $100 a night tickets, closed, shut down, dark, silent. And then restaurants and bars, I mean, you can't even go down to the corner. You can order something to take out or to be delivered. That's it, but you can't go and sit. And even though I live like a hermit and I don't partake of any of those things anymore, I used to, some of them more than others, I don't really do it, but but nonetheless, the environment, you're used to walking down the street, let's say Broadway, which is a block from me, and there's liveliness and there's people milling around and there's stores and there's restaurants. Like, I've got 10 or 20 restaurants just on my block of Broadway. It's that kind of neighborhood. So the idea that suddenly there's this deadness, this silence, this emptiness, and this, that the atmosphere is suddenly changed so rapidly, so suddenly, so abruptly, and so extremely. And the only thing that is comparable is what I have heard about wartime, when everything shuts down. And one of the things that I remember reading about at the end of World War II, the great celebrations, they could go to movies again. So they're like these kind of little signature moments in my mind that, oh my God, this must be what wartime is like. So that's a shock. And it's traumatizing. It's destabilizing. That was just the first effect. The first impact it had on me was just my environment is suddenly changed, and this thriving, vital, vibrant city that I live in, even though I try to avoid being part of it, is silenced. So in a way, it didn't affect me personally very much. My lifestyle was not changed at all, not one iota. But that was the first effect that it had. But then after that, it started to sink into me. Oh my God, all these people's livelihoods. Every single establishment that I named, any store, any restaurant, any venue, any theater, any museum, it supports thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people who are just the support industry that make that happen. And they're all out of work. And suddenly that hit me. Suddenly the whole economic impact hit me, and the implications of what this was going to mean what this could potentially mean. So even while on a certain level, the fear that was being stirred up by the media started out as a panic about illness, it quickly expanded, really being a panic about the economy. And that felt to me more real, more like the illness part is going to come and go. And I don't expect to, I may not be affected by it, I probably won't. But the economy part will last.
Mm.
And I will be affected by it, and so will everybody. And it's because of our interdependence that I'll be affected by it. Because it's not just me, that I don't just depend on my livelihood, I depend on the whole world's livelihood and so forth. So that's, so that aspect of shock and awe, of trauma and destabilization happens when there's sudden change of any kind, even positive change has a stress component and impacts the nervous system and makes you feel disoriented. It's the disorientation when the world suddenly changes. The animal wants to maintain the sameness. The ego wants to maintain sameness, feels comfortable and secure in sameness. And we all know that even if the sameness is terrible, there's a tendency to want to continue what you know, what you're familiar with. It's called comfort zone. So that was the first wave of my experience. And then I'll let you share, because I can go on from there.
Well, what kicked in after that?
Well, what kicked in after that, so this is interesting. What kicked in very soon after that was this arising within me that, oh, I have something to offer. I can be of service to my community. And my community is an online community. And my light worker tribe. And all the people that I have, you know, at different stages in different ways helped or shared with. But I suddenly felt this really powerful urge and understanding that I know how to do this, and I'm suddenly feeling called. And so I very quickly started to take action, and it felt really good. That gave me something to do, and it gave me a way to connect even more, because, you know, again, even though my life is not one of socializing, and most of my social contacts are already virtual, nonetheless, when there's anything so disruptive happening in the world, you want contact with people. You want to feel connected. So I started, you know, I did a few things. I had a call where people got to share. It was really beautiful. And then I just, you know, pulling all kinds of little tricks out of my pockets that I've been collecting for years, and I get to share them. And it's wonderful to feel that impulse and that expression. So that was the next thing, and I felt connected, and I felt purposeful. Also, something else for me, because I've been in a little bit of a fluid place in my work, my expression, and all of a sudden, and I think this is something that's been happening for a lot of people who are in business, it's like there's this either a challenge, like, oh, what do I do now? My business offer doesn't make any sense in the context of what's happening. Or in my case, I was able to pivot and say, wow, this is exactly what makes sense. This is more appropriate for me in terms of what my purpose is than anything I've really had an opportunity to offer before. I felt like I kind of slid right into a deeper connection to my purpose that felt amazing, actually. So that shifted. I could also address, because I'm teaching tools for dealing with anxiety. And of course, I get to use them on myself. So I was calming my own nervous system and also helping others do the same. So there was that. And that was like, and I don't know to what degree the anxiety level is as high now as it was a week ago. I'm feeling differently. And I don't know if other people are as well. So, however, what is the same is that the world is different. The world has changed. So whether or not I call it anxiety, there's still something to get there's an adjustment that has to happen. And there's still a disorientation because it's still unknown. We're still facing the unknown. And of course, it's just what's happening this week. Suddenly I'm being inundated with conspiracy theories. Suddenly everybody is talking about what we need to do to move through this, so it's like there's a wave after wave after wave of shift in consciousness. And I think that'll continue to happen. So I don't know, I can't really anticipate or presume to know what will be called forth a week from now, a month from now. Right now, it feels like I'm already shifting from the position of triage, of like, how can I bring in some Band-Aids and help people or help us get reconnected to our higher consciousness and ground, mostly calm the animal and calm the child. That's what really needs to happen. And that needs to happen. That needs to happen. We can't pretend that we don't have a scared child and a scared animal in us. Maybe we don't have it on alarm all the time, but there's no blame, no shame if that comes up under circumstances where the whole world has suddenly changed. It's just normal. And it's physical, it's physiological.
Yeah.
It's wired. So it's not like, oh, I'm not enlightened enough. Why should I be feeling fear if I were really whatever? No, you take care of that part, especially if you're able to be in touch with a higher awareness. You take care of that part. You send it the love and the compassion, and you calm it, and you make sure that it doesn't take over, and that it feels safe, that part of you has to feel safe. And it's going to be different for everyone, but now I am looking more towards, where is this going? Really, really, and we're going to get into that more, like, is this the beginning of this major transformation that we've all been predicting and talking about for so long?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? What's that going to be like? What's that going to demand of each of us, and so forth? So I'm gonna hit the pause button there and let you talk, Natalie.
Well, I think you raise a good point. Whatever the fear people are experiencing, whatever the cause, like it could be of the virus, it could be of money, it could be of taking care of loved ones, whatever, or just the unknown in general, we're all feeling something.
Just the shock of change.
Yeah, the change alone. Yeah, so that's there. But yeah, I think for me, the way I experience fear, or the way I see fear is fuel for creation. And so what I've experienced as fear in my body, I've noticed it's like I experience it like a power surge. So this whole event has given me a surge in power, but my propensity, my response to that has been control, mostly. Like my whole body starting to shake and tingle, and all the hallmarks of having a power surge in your body, and then wanting to shut it down and wanting to control outcomes and make things happen, and take charge, like take control of our destiny now, even if it's like for one day. So rather than allowing my body to adjust to the increase in power, it's partly gone into trying to control my reality. And so that's been interesting to observe, but that's a pattern that I see in myself every time I get a power surge. Never expected it to come from this. But like you, I feel like I was born for this time. And so in that, I feel this uprising in myself, or a rising, shouldn't say uprising. Whole experience is an uprising, but yes, it's a rising of power. And how do we handle that increase in power? Because it's definitely pushing us to do something or do more, or be more, to step up. But that takes time to assimilate and to go, well, where is it? How's it going to be directed? Which is partly why we're doing this video, because we're directing that energy into our experiences.
Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
When you talk about like that's your typical response to a power surge, so I'm not even sure if I know what you're talking about, because we experience things differently. We have very different bodies and energy systems. And I don't know that I certainly don't tend to respond to fear with a power surge. At least I've never called it that. Although sometimes, you know, what does happen is when there's a crisis, something kicks in that I would call will. Okay, I know what to do and I've got to do it. That isn't always my reaction. Sometimes my reaction is, oh, just hide under the covers till it's over.
Yeah.
You know, I can go either way. But I wonder if your tendency to want to take control is a reaction to really being in the unknown, where everything is, you know, all the threads are unraveling and the fabric isn't holding together the way it was. Like you want to weave them back, weave something, make something solid again or known.
That's, I mean, I guess I just see it as energy, and I don't really distinguish fear from any other kind of energy. It's just it's a surge of energy when we go into fear, and it's, if we quash it or control it, it stays as fear. If we channel it, it becomes creation. Like we can create something from that. If we're consciously directing it into being productive. So of course, a lot of people are having these well, this is just my language, as you say, Toma. It's just the way I see fear. But a lot of people I see are having these power surges, but they're directing the energy into fueling more fear and fueling, like gossiping or spreading drama, or going, did you hear this? Did you hear that? You know, I've gone in and out of that myself. You know, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just observing that the difference, that when you do that, you're not actually creating anything for the new world. You're just spinning the wheels on the old one.
Okay. Can I interject something? Because I'm seeing a parallel that's really interesting. Or I should let you finish. I shouldn't interrupt
No,
you.
please go.
Okay. So what you just said about feeling fear is just energy and you have to feel it. So in certain kinds of, I guess you would call it somatic psychotherapy, for instance, there's a very common approach, a very wise and powerful approach, which is, to me, has always been easiest to understand when it comes to the feeling called anger. Because, you know, every emotion has a different energy quality. So anger is very propulsive and outer-directed and highly charged, a lot of strength, whereas depression is just the opposite. It's like a sinking down and it's a, you know, diminishment. So with anger, you can really see it, where they say, just feel it as energy, experience it as energy. If you take away the story, if you stop saying, but he did that to me, and if you just take that away and you feel, let yourself feel the energy of the anger, it feels like strength. It's actually strength. And it's like strength is anger without the story, or anger without the story reveals itself as strength. So you're saying something like that about fear, like you're able to actually bypass or drop the story and feel the energy in your body that's going like this, and quickly translate it into, what can this be channeled into? What can this be used for? But most people are not you. And most people just got to cut us some slack, because most of us are focused on the story. It's the story that makes us afraid.
I'm not saying I've mastered this by any means.
Okay.
Oh my God. It's just how I look at it and how I approach this energy. That's just my way. But so that's what I'm kind of aiming for. But absolutely, it has played out in my own wounding. And that's what power surges do in the body, whether it's whatever the intense emotion is, rage or fear or grief, it pushes out the old circuitry, the old programs, the old emotions that's stuck in the body. And what it does is pushes them out through the wounds, the wounding in the body. And so for example, one of my woundings is, I don't want to actually own that anymore. One of my
used to be in the past.
My past tendencies has been to feel over responsible for other people that I love. And so one of the ways it's played out in this is, of course, that I've channeled the energy into, I must get my people together. I must make it happen at all costs and take care of them and make sure they're okay. So there's partly protective nature in there. There's fierce love in there. But then there's partly the neuroses of it's all my responsibility. I have to take that on myself, which is bullshit. So I've had to call my bullshit in this and go and step back and go, none of those people are my responsibility. I can love them, but I can only meet them halfway. So I'm not going to overstep that mark. But this has been my response.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my energy has been channeled, because that was the prominent wound in a scenario like this.
That was the role you were assigned, and that was the pattern. And what you're saying also makes me think of one of the most adaptive responses to fear is, what can I do? What can I do to make it better? What can I do to help? And there are these people who are known to be good in an emergency. And those are people who are not paralyzed by the fear, but they're propelled into action, and they can actually keep a cool head and see in a very logical way what needs to happen. Like, no, don't do that. It's a waste of time. We need to go here now, and we just do it. And I'll tell you what to do. Just follow me. Because some people are just like blithering, like, it's the danger, just completely shuts down any executive function.
Yeah.
So then these other people have their executive function just comes on really strong, and you want those people around. I mean, those are great. But it's an adaptation to, there's danger. I'm not going to be helpless. I'm going to be effective. I'm going to take over. I'm going to be strong, and I'm going to be purposeful, and I'm going to make a difference here.
Yeah.
And maybe save my loved ones. There may be that protectiveness is part of it.
That's it. It's my martyr program has totally been activated in all of this and made me see that it's still live and kicking in me. This propensity to have to save other people, and, that it's my job. And I'm witnessing this across the board, actually, in a lot of people but in different ways, not necessarily in my way, but different ways where, but I just want to help. But actually, is that really what is needed right now? Unless there's someone sick on your floor, or there's something immediately in your field that someone needs help, then probably you need to step back and go, well, what are you going to do on the other side of this crisis? What are you creating and contributing to the new world? And that's where, that's my whole thing around fear, is channel the fear into creation. It's the best antidote.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you say that, what I see is a timeline where we're starting off here with a crisis, and we're going to like this peak of reactivity, and then we're gradually adapting, and then maybe things are getting really shitty, and then maybe things are going kind of like this, and then eventually people are kind of looking around and thinking, what's possible, and notice some things have changed, and then eventually we start, I don't want to go back to that old way. There's something better. And obviously we're all different places with that realization. Some people are not oriented that way immediately, take a much longer time. But what I'm seeing is people have to be where they are. So right now there is some triage needed. People do need to heal. People do need to reintegrate. And by the way, something that hasn't been mentioned enough is that an event like this can really trigger trauma and collective trauma from people's nervous system. Anyone who has experienced huge disruption of any kind, and particularly of a collective kind, like war or calamity, or being having to move, all these different things that are happening to large numbers of people that are traumatizing, any natural event or man-made event, they're being triggered. So people's nervous system is all getting disintegrated, and we have to get integrated. Now, I agree with you that the ideal, and I predict, as I think you do too, that people's wiring is going to reintegrate in a different formation, in a different pattern. It's not going to be the same old, same old. We do not want business as usual. And this is an opportunity, because all of a sudden, so many pieces have come apart, and we have an opportunity to put them together again in a different way, or just leave those pieces, forget about those pieces, and let's just take a couple of new pieces over here and create something different. However, I don't think like week 2 or week 3 of a major global catastrophe is the time that most people are ready to roll up their sleeves and create the new future. I think that's premature. I think that might be your time, might be right for you.
Well, hang on, can I just pause there? I think there's 2 groups
at least.
In terms of, well, for simplicity, there's 2 groups. There's the ones who are in fear and having to deal with the day-to-day operations of their life and just getting through this. And then there's the others who have already released the matrix to a point where they're now experiencing a power surge or excitement or whatever you want to call it, going, this is my time. They're the ones who can be creating the new world and directing their energy into that. And so I agree. I don't think it's realistic to expect that other group of people to be doing that. But this group has to rise so that they have something to move towards, because they're still dealing with the catastrophe. There's plenty of people who are not dealing with any catastrophe because they don't live on the system. They've already released a lot of those old programs. This is not a shock to them. They were expecting it. So they're really different beasts. And so I guess I'm speaking more to them and not denying that that's the majority, is that they are in the trauma of this. And the trauma has not peaked yet either. Peak of the trauma, in my view, is going to come when the economic reality that this is an irretrievable financial reality for people, that something new does to be created. So from my view, I'm like, right, I want to hurry up and create something, so when that peak happens, they have something to fall into or move towards.
Yeah. So I think that's fantastic. It's fantastic that you are seeing that, and that it's like your role is already providing that possibility, and that so that you can, and you and whoever else is ready, you can certainly open that door and invite people. In terms of the people who are not affected, I certainly see that people who are living off the grid pretty much would not be at all affected. I am not one of those people, though. I have rent to pay. So I do go into financial fear, and it's not going to be an easy thing for me to pack my bags and leave. I'm living here for so many decades. That's not going to happen overnight or, in a month. So I'm even people whose consciousness is more in the avant-garde, our life is not necessarily there,
It's true.
Yeah. And then their realities, it's like people have family members who are in different places and who have different, maybe physical needs. Like some of my friends have partners who are ill, not ill with the virus, but have, physical ailments that have to, suddenly there's an extra concern about that. And one of the people who was on my call last week sort of addressed this, and she said that, that she was feeling pretty centered, and she was feeling like a lot of faith and trust and a lot of connection to the higher energies. But then she would listen to the news and suddenly she'd get engulfed with fear. And that's why I created this little method. I call it the healing mantra or something like that. Okay, there has to be a way to quickly shift back. I'm not going to blame myself if I get inundated by fear, but I'm not going to pretend that I can just get back into my center. Okay, I'm stronger than this. It's like, okay, what do I actually need? Oh, what I have to do is comfort the one who's afraid. That's the first step. now I can shift, so it's like just understanding the inner parts and how they function, and not to try to overstep what some part of me needs. Like, this part of me is fearful,
Right. Yeah.
but the best thing I can do is to give her love and compassion and comfort her, and then sort of take her by the hand and say, it's okay, you're not doing this, you're not the one who has to do it, I'm here, I'll take care of you, we'll do it together, you'll be my little sidekick, and let's see what we can do. And then I put some other images, words, and vibrational frequencies into my system, and I remind myself, and then I can completely shift. But I don't know how to do it. It's like, for most people, even if we've done a fair amount of work on ourselves, we're so susceptible to falling back into those fears because those primitive parts of ourselves are still operative. They haven't been completely healed or integrated. And we're living in this cesspool of fear. We're just living in this collective field where fear is what we breathe. And of course, to the degree that we listen to the media, it just gets stirred up. So we have to really deliberately discover tools that work. It's just like having your hands on a steering wheel. If you see yourself careening off the side of the road into a cliff, you actually turn the wheel and you get back on the path. You don't just say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. You don't just give in. You take command. You say, oh, I remember there's that method Tomar taught me. I'm going to try that.
Yeah,
So
I think it's a balance of, sitting with yourself and I guess self-soothing or whatever, doing the healing part, like you said, and then also taking action. And if we can somehow balance the two, I think we're going to keep moving in a really amazing way. And so that's what I've been looking at in myself. I spent a lot of time sitting, but then also a lot of time organizing, going, right, where are my people? What do they need? What can we create here from the resources that we have? How are we going to band together? With the view of, because I don't live off grid either at the moment, with view to eventually being more self-sufficient, but not as a solo person or in a couple, but actually have, be living with multiple people or have multiple people to call on. So that's just me and where I'm taking this. Anyone can create anything from this. Whatever you create will be great, but create something.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking is, for me, the shift is not to immediately start figuring out what I can create. And I, like you, all my life, or my adult life, I've wanted to live in community. So that's a vision that's very potent for me, even though, unlike you, I don't really have never felt like I had a very clear access to it. It's like it's not easy for me to see how I could make that happen. Not to say that I can't. So for me, the next step is not, okay, I've got to start figuring out, making a plan. Who can I move with? Where can I go? How can I pack things up? How could I convert my this to that? But rather like, okay, what happens if I just ground myself and open and just sit and see if I get some vision, or I get some guidance, or just, what's the next step? Just ask, what's the next step? That's enough for me.
Yeah.
That would be really enough for me.
No, and I think it's enough for most people, because most people were not prepared for this. But there's plenty of people who were already aiming to live off grid and already moving in that direction, or sense that there was an event coming like this where that was going to be the outcome. But I completely agree. Most people don't know. And there are days when I just go, okay, I sit and I feel, what's the vision in my heart? Like, where is this? What do I see from my heart? So I get my head out of it. And then from there, I've just noticed that I just attract the right people in, and the right things start to unfold, because it's coming from my body, not my head. And, we, especially people in the same resonance or frequency as one another, have, whatever you want to call that, soul family, or these Age of Aquarius tribes that will emerge, is that we are connected at the heart, and we have that heart resonance. So others hear us when we feel that.
So, right. So that's perfect. So my understanding of this, you are closer to being like you and maybe some of your friends who have been really actively and with energy thinking about moving off grid and thinking about creating a self-sustaining community. Say, this is a signal. We just got the go ahead. Now we start thinking about it, put the plan in action, create the plan. For me, what feels doable and actually quite potent is simply say, okay, I'm going to really hold the vision of what I want. What do I feel would be? Or even asking my higher powers to show me that vision. Maybe my vision is just something I'm attached to. Maybe that's not the right vision for me. But just to not get caught in the fear, but also not get stuck in feeling like nothing can change, or that I just want to, just give me a paycheck and I'll be happy. But it's like, okay, I just want to hold the vision. Like, yes, this is the time. Yes, I've got the signal. And the signal is telling me it's time to start focusing with great deliberation and purpose on what it is I want to create, and just hold that in my heart and radiate it out, and use all the powers that I know from the level of consciousness and working with quantum energies to activate that vision. Just activate that vision and send it out and call the people to me, or the circumstances, whatever it is. And that's as far as I can go, because I don't have a plan, and I don't have I'm not ready to take action and look at maps and figure out where to move. But that's my next step.
Perfect.
And that's, So whatever that is, in a certain way, they're very compatible. They're like complementary approaches to activating the vision of the future that we want, of the world that we want to live in, of the possible world that we know we're here to help bring in.
Yeah. I think the probably the last thing I feel to say about all of this right now is to really expect magic and miracles now, because there is this influx of high frequency energy coming in as all this yucky, murky, toxic shit is coming out of our world. And so what do you want to focus on? Like, really, there are miraculous things are going to happen very quickly, and every day. A miracle can happen every day. And so really treating every 24 hours as a separate experience, not like the day before and not like tomorrow, because that's how rapidly things are changing. So there's a lot of magic in the air, so use it.
And that's part of that visioning and alignment. The alignment is partly with affirming that I am miraculous, that anything is possible, that infinite potential is here now, and that this is my reality. And I'm just calling in and asking for the highest possible next step, the highest possible vision, the highest possible timeline to unfold. And as we were saying before, it's like there's this toxic energy around the earth that has been there for so long, and we want to get through this phase of disruption to the world we want to live in. And we don't have to go through the muck to get there. We can actually sail over that through the clear sky. And that's all has to do with energy and consciousness, and believing that that's what is ours. That is what we're here to do. So we're here to model for other people and to teach and to help people with as well.
So let's be the forerunners, the ones who rise and show people the golden path.
However we do it, and we can model different methods or different expressions of a higher potential.
It's all the same in the end anyway. We're creating a new world, and everyone has their contribution. So just be that.
Exactly. And so it has everything to do with anchoring to that and really finding that core of resonance in yourself with that new world, and just keeping energizing that sun in your heart keeps glowing.
Yes.
Glowing that vision. Yeah.